This is Shirleen Sando, and I am the Biblical Baker. I want to teach you everything I know that I've learned over the years about cooking with grains and foods from ancient times, from biblical times. I do a lot of whole grain cooking, and I use a lot of ancient grains, and we're going to be using one today called einkorn. And I'm going to talk about einkorn, and we're going to be making some oatmeal cookies. I'm actually filming the 12 days of whole grain Christmas cookies. That's 12 days of whole grain Christmas cookies. So the 12 days of whole grain Christmas cookies is what we're doing. And we're doing candy cane cookies and sugar cookie cutouts that we'll decorate. We're going to do gingerbread. But today, I'm doing one of my granddaughter's favorites. And honestly, I believe it's everybody that's ever eaten these cookies. And they've gone to events in California, big events, Red Fest and places. They've gone to church socials. They've gone to bake sales. They've gone to all of my family and friends. Everybody loves these, and they're 100% whole grain einkorn. We're not going to use any modern wheat. Sometimes I do put in some modern, unbleached, organic modern wheat. I wouldn't use any that's had all the chemicals and sprays on them and things that have been linked to cancer. And a lot of people with the modern wheat, a lot of people have trouble with modern wheat, and because of the tough, strong, elastic gluten strands in them. That's what makes your bread rise. But cookies, we don't need them to rise much anyway. But with the ancient grains, the einkorn, and we'll do all kinds of ancient grains, but the einkorn is specifically has a weaker gluten structure, but you can still make bread and pancakes and all kinds of stuff. I use a lot of einkorn. I wrote a book one time called Einkorn, Ancient Grains, Einkorn Spelt, and Quinoa. And I have a lot of recipes and research in the book on those grains. I'm working on a book now. Probably I'm going to call it The Biblical Baker, because I do a lot of ancient grains that were used during the biblical times. So that's, you know, there's buckwheat, there's emmer, there's einkorn, there's furrow, and we're going to talk about all those different kinds of grains. One day we may just do a show where we go through and just specifically talk about the grains. We'll do videos, and I've done videos in the past on how to store grains for people that like to store them. And how to sprout grains. I like to sprout my grains. These grains, these einkorn grains, I did sprout because I like to soak them and sprout them, but you don't have to. But still, einkorn's easier to digest, but when you sprout grains, they're even easier yet. And while I keep bigger quantities of grains, when I have small amounts, this is einkorn in here, I'll put them in these little seal meal bags. You know, you seal it up with a little machine. And I put a little oxygen absorber in there and then seal it. Soaks all, just in case the machine doesn't get all the air out. It often doesn't. And then I'll seal those up, and I'll just keep those in a little bucket with a gamer lid on it. First, we're going to talk about why einkorn. Einkorn, like I said, has a weaker gluten strand, so it's easier for most people to digest. It's still gluten. If you're celiac, you probably cannot have it. But so millions and millions, not just many, but millions of people are having trouble with eating wheat because they say it hurts their stomach. Well, some of it can hurt my stomach too. But I have found, since I'm actually using a meal, I have a grain meal, and it takes 5 seconds or so to 10 seconds to actually mill your own grain. And I'm going to show you how that works here in a minute. And you know, in Europe and other countries, every home has a grain meal. It's kind of getting that way here now. People are buying them. They're backlogged, and they're hard to get sometimes, but they're getting a little easier to get. But you want to get a good meal. Don't skimp on getting a meal. You can get a hand meal, but you'll spend an awful lot of time grinding your grains. You get a really good one, it's worth paying a little extra, in my opinion, but there's all kinds, and I bought a really good one, and I'm very happy with it. I'm going to pour this in here. This is what we're going to grind today. We only need 1.5 cups. And a cup of these grains, I'll show you these grains. 1 cup, it's a wheat, but it's a little bitty tiny wheat, tiny little kernels. But a cup will make 1.5 cups, and we're going to grind about 1 cup, maybe just a little extra. Anytime you grind your grains, they start, you know, these grains are full of 45 nutrients. It would be like taking 45 vitamin pills a day. Who wants to do that when you could eat an oatmeal cookie? I'll take the cookie. This has protein, it has a lot of fiber, it has 40 to 45 nutrients, it's high in lutein, which is really good for your eyes. It's high in magnesium, potassium, just 45 things, B vitamins. You want energy? Switch to your whole grains. They're full of B vitamins, and that's what gives you energy. They are amazing. But Einkorn I've used for years and years and years. Like I said, I wrote the book before Einkorn became popular. It is becoming more mainstream and popular now. When I wrote the book, nobody was using it much or didn't even know what it was. So you can buy the grains, you can buy the flour. But what the flour is generally what they call a high extraction flour. And I do buy it sometimes. But they take 20% of the bran out, but there's still 80%. The bran is where all the vitamins are. Once you strip that out, like an all-purpose flour you buy in the store, they strip everything out and they put 5 or 6 nutrients back. And that's 5 or 6 out of the 35, 40, 45 they took out. So what are you getting? Not getting very much, and those are synthetic and they're hard to digest. And if your flour has been commercially prepared, unless it's organic or unbleached, you're getting things in it like Roundup and chemicals. You're getting all kinds of chemicals and sprays and fungicides. So you don't want that, because those things, a lot of people have found once they got off the processed or commercial flours, their gut issues went away, or pretty much went away. And the people that turned ancient grain have found that they pretty much have gone away. They can eat these. These don't bother me at all. And they don't bother me if I use part whole grain and part all-purpose. Again, organic, unbleached. Bleaching agents are not good for you, and you can buy those in the store now. They're becoming mainstream. Organic and unbleached is mainstream now, because people are learning they don't want that stuff in their bodies. But a lot of people that have turned to milling their own grains have also found that their gut issues, even with a red wheat, a hard red wheat, a hard white wheat, which is a more modern wheat, and I buy organic grains too, by the way. I only buy organic grains. But when they mill them themselves, you're getting all the nutrition, you're getting all the fiber. You mill it and you use it. If you don't use it, you can put it in the refrigerator a day or two, then stick it in the freezer if it's going to be longer. Because once it's milled, it'll start losing your vitamin E. This stuff right here is full of vitamin E. Not just a vitamin E pill with one compound in it, or one component of vitamin E, but the whole gamut. You want all of it. You don't want to isolate what you take in vitamin pills any more than you have to. Get it from food. That's your best source. And it's the most digestible. If you want to be healthy and have energy and help your gut, you know, there's grains you can get for your gut, specifically barley, and I'll do a barley soup one day. We put barley grain in lots of things, lots of soups and stews and things like that. But also bake with it, cook with it, make waffles and all kinds of stuff. But we're going to mill this, and then again we're going to use it. And what I have left over, that's why I'm going to take a cup, which makes a cup and a half. I'm going to do just a little over a cup, maybe a cup and a fourth, just so I make sure I have enough. And any leftover will go right into the freezer. Right after this show is over, I'll put it in a little bag and label it, and it goes in the freezer. Then when I need a little bit for something, I'll have it. You can use your whole grain flours that you mill or buy in your gravies and stews and biscuits and all kinds of stuff. The thing I was going to talk about too, if you don't mill your own, and everybody doesn't have a mill, you can buy what they call high extraction whole grains. Again, that's 80% of the nutrients are still there. You can get them in Einkorn, and it's pretty much in all the supermarkets nowadays. You see there's a company that makes it, and they really promote it because it's out there. I bought it myself, and you can certainly buy it online. But you can buy high extraction flours, and you can even get there's mills that do all kinds of high extraction, not just Einkorn, but your modern wheats and your they call pastry flours to make pie crust. Makes really good pie crust. You can make high extraction flours yourself, and I'll do that on a show someday, but I've got 40 and 50 mesh sifters, and you just sift out a lot of that bran. You're not going to sift out more than 20% though. They're not designed to sift down to where there's nothing left. Like wheat you buy in the store, they go through roller mills and they take all the bran out. Then they put back a few synthetic vitamins. And even your whole wheat has some of the bran removed, because the oil in the bran will make the flour go rancid, and they know that. So they have to take some of that out. Depends on the company, the flour, and the bran, what you're getting. But I do buy some whole wheat flour. I buy organic once in a while. But a lot of the recipes, your whole wheat, because it's the oil's been removed, sometimes things will get kind of dry. Even though I'll tell you what I'm using when I'm making recipes. The whole wheat can often be used. I've never made these with whole wheat. I've always made them with einkorn, but I think you probably could. I think it'd be fine. And I also use a scale. It's not an expensive scale. It's inexpensive, but a scale will give you accurate measurements. If I measure a cup of flour and you measure a cup of flour and we weigh them on a scale, they're not going to weigh the same thing. I've done videos on that, and I'll do another one sometime. But it depends, are you dipping, pouring? How compacted is the flour? When you mill it yourself, it's light and airy and fluffy. Sometimes if you buy the compacted, or you've had it in the freezer and it's settled down compacted, then it's equal to a compacted. But if you fresh mill it, sometimes you may have to use, in some recipes, 1 or 2 extra tablespoons to, if you're trying to convert a recipe. I've already converted these, so it's already done. Don't change these. Use them just the way they are. But you can use the all-purpose einkorn that you buy if you need to do that. So I'm going to show you. Now, this grain, when you buy your grains, they're just like beans. You have to just look through them. I buy pretty clean grains. Some companies are cleaner than others. So it all depends what you got. I have had companies that they'd have shaft in them. And, well, that's okay. Those, I'm going to soak my greens overnight and then sprout them most of the time anyway. And when you soak them, that shaft will kind of rise to the top, and you can just get it off and rinse it off. So by the time I get to milling it, those grains are pretty clean. And these are very clean, because a lot of companies sell really, really clean grains. But anyway, I've looked through these. I don't see any little rocks. You can have a little rock or pebble just like you can in a bean. That will ruin your meal. That's why you want to look through them. You don't want a little rock or pebble in there. But again, you can buy your flour if you want to. So I'm going to take you over, and I'm going to show you how to mill this. Just very briefly. It doesn't take any time at all. It's my meal. You can get all kinds of meals. I really, really like this one. It's a professional grade. I paid a little more for it, but it wasn't unaffordable. But it was a little bit more than the others. You just have to check out meals and look at them and look online and look at reviews and see what people say. I mean, that's really what you want to do. So I just take the lid off. I keep a little thing of bay leaves in there. I've never had bugs in my grains, but they say you can get them. And since I'm milling in here, I just keep this little bay leaf thing right in the, set it in there, set it out. It's not a big deal. And we're going to turn it on. This is very quick. And we'll start putting our grain in. This is our flour. It's very, very fine. I have that on the finest setting. It just makes wonderful flour. We're going to use 1.5 cups, which is 190 grams, and we're going to go by grams. So that's what we're going to turn our scale on. Problem with cups is if you just dip, level off, sometimes you get too much flour, especially after your flour's been sitting and compacted. We're going to dip until we get 190 grams. And that's the amount we want to use. If you're going to do bread baking, much baking really at all, it's a lifesaver. May not matter as much with cookies, but with bread it really matters. But honestly, with cookies, you can still get too much flour if you start, let's say you have a bag of flour that you bought and it's pretty compacted. Fluff it up at least. But if you just do that cup compacted flour and this cup of light flour is two different things, two different measurements. At least take your flour and really, really fluff it up, or even better yet, sift it like they used to do when I was growing up, when I was a kid. Everybody sifted their flour, and I tell you what, wouldn't be a bad idea to go back to it, or just better yet, get a scale. So this is 190. It's got a little over. I'm going to take a little bit out. There we go. I'll tell you these other ingredients. We have 1 egg, which I'm going to beat up. I'm going to beat my egg just a little bit. Now, you can make these cookies with a hand mixer. I've done that many times. What you do then, you just whip up your wet ingredients and then take your dry and mix them together in a bowl with a whisk. Then you just have to mix the liquid into the dry. I've done live cooking shows and I've made these before for that. So then you just have to mix the wet and dry. This makes 5 dozen cookies, by the way, and we're going to bake them off at 350. Okay, so we have, for this recipe, we have our egg, we have our 1 1/2 cups of flour. We have 1 1/4 cups of softened butter. Make sure your butter is softened. You just cannot mix that butter and sugar. You got to really cream them together. And that's hard to do with butter that is not softened. You do not want melted. Do not melt it, just softened. 1 1/4 cups of cane sugar. Has some minerals in it. You can use sugarnut too. And then we have 3 cups of organic oats. You have a 1/2 cup of cranberries, organic of course. I've got my nuts here. I'll get those up here where you can see them. I'm going to chop some on them. These are toasted walnuts. I've already toasted them. And they were walnut pieces, so they were already kind of chopped. But I'm going to chop them just a little bit more because there's still a few bigger pieces in there that I want to get rid of. Use a 1/2 cup of the walnuts. We have 1 1/4 teaspoons of cinnamon, but my recipe, these are my recipes. I wrote it calling for a teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. My granddaughter will be eating these. She can't have nutmeg, so I'm doing 1 1/4 teaspoons of cinnamon. We have a teaspoon of vanilla. We have a teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/2 teaspoon of the salt. Now, I like to, and I'll do this right now, baking soda and salt, because I'll grind my own sea salt, by the way, and it can get lumpy a little bit after it sets. So I just take my little grinder and grind them right into my flour. This didn't have lumps, but if it did, that would have caught them to mash them up. Okay, so I'm going to put my cinnamon in there too. Might as well get that in there. It may look a little different than your mixer, but that's okay. It's just a different kind of mixer. This is really good for bread. I can do 7 loaves at one time, and that's why I like it. But you can use a hand mixer. You can use any mixer you've got. I'm going to take this out and put my butter in, which again, it's softened, but not melted. You've got to have it softened. One of the secrets to good baking, and cookie baking especially, but any baking, one is to have your ingredients at room temperature. But when you're dealing with butter and sugar to blend together, you want that butter softened, and you want that egg at room temperature. So my egg has been setting out for a little bit, so it's all good. Less sugar in there to get creamy like whipped cream, really creamy. Just want to really whip it. Like I said, it's going to look kind of like whipped cream, very creamy, and that's what you want. Once you've got these things all whipped up the way you want them, the rest of it, if you're using a hand mixer, just stir the rest of the ingredients in by hand. I'm going to add in our flour. Mix all that up good. And whisk it together. All that baking soda and salt and all that in there. I'll put this in about a 1/4 of a cup at a time. On low. Keep your mixer on low if you're using it, because you don't want to be building gluten. Even though this is a weaker gluten, it still has some, we'll make some gluten strands. We'll mix in our oats, our cranberries, and our toasted walnuts. Again, on low. Put in my cranberries. I was able to get all the yolks in there. It's doing okay. And our nuts, all you want to do is just mix those in. That's it. Now put that dough out onto a piece of parchment and just kind of finish mashing it together so everything's mixed well. It's really thick dough. You want to make sure it's mixed up well. You can get your hands in it. Now I want to give you a little tip about whole grain cookie dough. It's best to refrigerate it. Some doughs you want it like the sugar cookie and candy, and I refrigerate them overnight, and then I let it set out just to get room temperature, not too soft, because you don't want it too soft. You want that butter firmed up in there, but soft enough you can roll out into sugar cookie shapes or whatever. This is even best to refrigerate it for 30 minutes or so. It keeps them from flattening out so much. Whole grain cookies will flatten out too much. And sometimes if you're trying to convert a recipe, and let's just say a chocolate chip or something, and you're not following, you know, like one of my recipes or somebody else's, you want to be careful. Like einkorn absorbs water more slowly, so you might want to let it set and let that flour soak up the water that's in your recipe. So don't rush it. And that applies more to bread than it does cookies, but it can apply to cookies. And sometimes it doesn't absorb fat as well, and you can use a little less fat. So be careful. I make chocolate chip cookies, and I'll make some for you. All kinds, and I can show you how to do it. But definitely on chocolate chip, you want to refrigerate that cookie dough. I'm using a small. I'll leave this in the refrigerator for 15 minutes. I've got my small cookie dough. You just want to flatten it out level. Put it on your parchment paper. Do not flatten them down. Let them stand up, because that will help them not flatten so much on you. And then what you want to do, I have taken these and I'll put them real close together all on the baking sheet and freeze it. Then I'll take them off and put them in a bag. Then when I want cookies, I have cookies in my freezer now, and they're different kinds. You can just, when it comes time to, like Christmas, and you want to bake all your cookies, then all you gotta do is bake them. So you can put these really close together to freeze them. But for baking, obviously, we want to spread them out a little bit. But yeah, the cold dough is best. You know, even 30 minutes in the refrigerator is a good thing. I think I can get 5 on there. These will spread out. These are really good einkorn cookies, though. Just amazingly good. My special secret recipe, but it's not a secret anymore, is it? Now everybody knows. That's all right. I'm going to share. It's a season of sharing. I'm going to put 4 down because I don't want them, they will spread out. So I want to make sure they aren't going to spread out and touch each other. I'll make peanut butter cookies. I'm going to make you some peanut butter blossom cookies, you know, with the little chocolate things on the top. Little chocolate kisses things. Those are really good. And I'll make that peanut butter dough with 100% einkorn too. It's very, very, very good. Tastes like old-fashioned peanut butter cookies. It's a really, really, really like almost 80-year-old recipe that I converted. So it's a good one. We'll be back. I'll finish putting these out and baking them. Bake them 9 to 10 minutes in that preheated 350 oven. And don't let them get too dark on you. Don't let them overbake. Just check them in 8 minutes. Once they start barely getting brown and golden on the edges, take them out and let them finish cooling and cooking on your pan, and then put them on your wire racks to finish cooling. Our cookies are out of the oven. I went ahead and froze. I put the other side on a tray and put them close together like I talked about. Put those in the freezer. When they get frozen, I'll dump them all into a little bag and zip it up. So they'll keep. And then when Christmas, these are the 12 days of Christmas, whole grain Christmas cookies. When Christmas comes, I will have my cookies in the freezer, ready to just get out and bake. Or if it's like candy cane, I'll probably go ahead and shape those, but then you have to store them so they won't get broken. So actually I may just freeze that dough too. But here's our Einkorn Oatmeal cookies. These are the best cookies to have at Christmas or any time of the year. They are amazing. Soft and chewy on the inside, if you can see that. Take those cranberries, those nuts. Einkorn has a really wonderful flavor. Modern wheat, even the organic that I buy, does not have the flavor of einkorn. I did a test one time baking with banana bread with 3 different ways, 3 different grains. Einkorn. They were all good, but Einkorn was the best, and I used the same recipe. You're gonna love these. Give your family the gift of healthier cookies this holiday season. And healthier breads too. Make with whole grains. Einkorn is probably one of the, well, this is the oldest. It's God's original grain. God's original wheat. It's the oldest grain there is. It's been identified. All the others came after. It's the only one that has not been hybridized in any way. Amazing. Make your family some healthy cookies and let me know how they turn out for you. Have a wonderful holiday season and Merry Christmas.